I was halfway through assembling Lily's new play kitchen when I heard it. A faint chime from the baby monitor app on my phone, the one connected to her nursery camera. At first, I ignored it, thinking it was just her shifting in her crib. But then came the sound. A man's voice, low, murmuring, almost too soft to catch. I froze mid-screw, my ears straining as my pulse thundered in my ears. It was unmistakable. Someone was talking to my 2-year-old daughter. The wrench slipped from my hands and clattered to the floor as I scrambled for my phone. My fingers fumbled, tapping the app open. The live feed from Lily's room popped up, and there she was, sitting up in her crib, her little hands clutching her stuffed bunny. She was smiling at someone. The angle was just off enough that I couldn't see who it was. All I could make out was the faint outline of a figure, crouched just out of frame. My heart slammed against my ribs as I stared, trying to process what I was seeing. Who the hell was in my house? I bolted upstairs, taking the steps 2 at a time. The door to Lily's room was closed, just like I'd left it. I threw it open, the doorknob banging against the wall. The room was empty, just Lily, blinking up at me with sleepy confusion. "Dada?" she murmured, her voice thick with drowsiness. I swept the room with my eyes, my breath coming in sharp bursts. There was no one there, no sign of anyone, but my chest felt tight, my skin clammy. I checked the window, locked, the closet, empty, under the crib, nothing. But I knew what I'd heard, what I'd seen. I scooped Lily up, holding her close as I grabbed the baby monitor and replayed the last 2 minutes of the recording. The voice was there again, clearer this time. "Daddy's gone," the man whispered, his tone soothing. "It's just me and you now, sweet girl." The room spun. I stumbled back, gripping the crib for support. By the time Laura came home an hour later, I was still in Lily's room, pacing with her in my arms. When I told Laura what happened, she stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "A man? In her room? Are you serious?" she asked, her tone somewhere between disbelief and annoyance. "I heard him," I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "The camera caught him. I'm not making this up." She rolled her eyes, grabbing the monitor from my hand. She watched the recording, her expression unreadable. "There's nothing here, James. Just static. Maybe the app glitched. You need to stop working so late. It's messing with your head." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Static? Laura, I know what I heard. You think I'm imagining this?" She shoved the monitor back at me, her jaw tightening. "I think you're overreacting. There's no one here. Can we not turn this into a thing?" The way she said it, cold, dismissive, sent a chill down my spine. Something was off, more than just her brushing me off. I didn't say anything, but my gut churned. Later that night, as Laura slept soundly next to me, I pulled the baby monitor app up again. This time, I scanned the saved recordings from the past week. Most of them were normal, just Lily tossing and turning, the soft hum of the white noise machine in the background. But then I found it. 3 nights ago, just after midnight, the camera caught movement. A man's shadow crossing in front of Lily's crib. The recording was brief, 5 seconds at most, but it was enough to make my blood run cold. Who was he? And why did it feel like Laura already knew? The next morning, I woke up with one thought hammering in my mind. I need answers. Laura had already left for work. Her early mornings were becoming more frequent, and Ethan had just finished breakfast. Lily was in her high chair, happily smearing yogurt across her face. The house felt still, almost too still, after what I'd discovered the night before. I sat across from Ethan, watching him scroll through his phone, oblivious. He had Laura's sharp cheekbones, her light hair, her everything. There wasn't a trace of me in him. Not in his looks, his mannerisms, not even in the way he walked. I couldn't shake the weight of that DNA test sitting in my email inbox. "Hey, Ethan," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. "You know how you were joking the other night about how Lily didn't get her loudness from me?" He looked up, his brow furrowed. "Yeah? What about it? Why'd you say that?" He shrugged, tossing his phone onto the table. "I don't know. It's just a joke. Lily's loud, Mom's loud, you're not. Makes sense, doesn't it?" I forced a laugh, but my chest tightened. "So you think you and Lily are more like Mom than me?" Ethan gave me a look like I just asked if water was wet. Yeah, duh. He grabbed his plate and headed to the sink, but something about his tone stuck with me. He wasn't just making observations. He sounded like he believed it, like it was a fact he'd known for a long time. That same knot in my stomach twisted harder. Once Ethan left for school, I turned my attention back to the baby monitor. The shadow, the voice, none of it made sense. I spent hours combing through the app settings, the recording files, anything that could explain what I'd seen. But every time I circled back to that clip, the pit in my stomach deepened. By the afternoon, I was desperate enough to try something I hadn't done in years. I called Laura's best friend, Jessica. Jessica and Laura had been inseparable for years, but ever since Lily was born, Jessica had started pulling back. At first, I thought it was just life getting in the way, but now I wasn't so sure. Jessica picked up on the second ring. "James? Wow, it's been a while," she said, her voice surprised but warm. "Yeah, sorry about that," I said, pacing the kitchen. "Listen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." There was a pause. "Okay, what's going on?" "It's about Laura," I said, hesitating for a moment. "Has she been acting strange? Or mentioned anything to you about, I don't know, someone coming over?" Jessica's end of the line went silent. Too silent. "Jess, I don't think this is something I should be getting involved in," she said finally, her tone cautious. That answer told me everything I needed to know. "Please," I pressed. "I'm trying to protect my kids here. If you know something, I need to hear it." Another long pause. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "James, if I tell you, you didn't hear it from me. I swear. It's not just one person," she said, the words hitting me like a freight train. "I've seen her meeting up with someone. A guy. Tall, dark hair. But there's someone else too. Someone I don't know. I think it's serious, James. And I think it's been going on for a while." The phone almost slipped from my hand. My heart pounded in my ears as her words sank in. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't know how," Jessica said, her voice tight with guilt. "And honestly, I didn't think it was my place. I'm sorry." I hung up without another word, my mind racing. Two people? Laura was seeing two different men? The pieces were clicking together now, and they painted a picture I didn't want to see. The voice on the baby monitor. The shadow in Lily's room. Ethan's casual comments. But none of it prepared me for what happened that night. I waited until after dinner, after the kids were asleep, to confront Laura. She was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when I stood in front of her, arms crossed. "Who was in Lily's room?" I asked, cutting straight to the chase. She looked up, startled. "What are you talking about?" "The baby monitor," I said, my voice cold. "It caught someone in her room. A man." Her face paled, just for a moment before she recovered. "That's ridiculous. You must have imagined it." I leaned in, my voice sharp. "Don't lie to me, Laura. I know about him. I know about them." Her expression shifted, hardening into something unrecognizable. She set her phone down slowly, her eyes meeting mine with a coldness I hadn't seen before. "And what are you going to do about it?" she said, her tone calm, almost bored. Her words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. It wasn't a denial. It wasn't an apology. It was a challenge. Ethan's words were a hammer to my chest. "Lily calls him Daddy." By the time I got out of the car, my hands were trembling so badly I could barely grip the door handle. Ethan climbed out, oblivious to the chaos swirling inside me. He muttered something about homework and disappeared into the house, leaving me standing in the driveway, staring blankly at Laura's car. My mind was racing, replaying every moment from the last 2 years. The baby camera, the DNA test, Ethan's offhand comments. And now this, Lily calling another man Daddy. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them by tiptoeing around the issue anymore. When I walked inside, the house was eerily quiet. Ethan had already gone upstairs, and Lily was napping in her room. Laura was in the kitchen, her back to me as she poured herself a glass of wine. "Nick," I said, my voice sharp. The glass froze midair. Laura turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. "What?" I stepped closer, my fists clenched at my sides. "Ethan told me everything. Nick, Lily." What the hell is going on? Her expression flickered just for a second, but it was enough. Enough for me to see the guilt beneath her carefully composed mask. You're being ridiculous, she said, setting the glass down with a clink. Nick is just a friend. And whatever Ethan told you, he's obviously exaggerating. You think I'm that stupid? I snapped. You think I haven't noticed the late nights, the excuses, the way you've been dodging me for months? I heard his voice on the baby monitor, Laura. I saw the footage. And now you're telling me he's just a friend. She crossed her arms, her jaw tightening. You're paranoid, James. Maybe if you weren't so busy playing detective, you'd focus on your family instead of inventing problems that aren't there. The audacity of her words nearly sent me over the edge. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to a dangerous whisper. Lily calls him Daddy, I said, watching her face carefully. Explain that. Her mask slipped completely then. For the first time, she looked scared. Not angry, not defiant, scared. James, she started, but I didn't let her finish. How long, Laura? I demanded. How long has this been going on? How long have you been lying to me? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence said it all. I turned away, running a hand through my hair as I tried to process what was happening. My family, my entire life. It was all a lie. But then Laura said something that stopped me dead in my tracks. It's not just Nick, she murmured, so softly I almost didn't hear her. I turned back, my heart pounding in my ears. What did you just say? Her eyes darted to the side, her hands fidgeting nervously. There's someone else, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The room spun. My knees felt weak. Who? I demanded, my voice rising. Who else, Laura? She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. It doesn't matter, she said. None of it matters. I slammed my fist on the counter, making her jump. It matters to me. Who is he? Her lips trembled, and for a moment, I thought she might actually tell me. But then she clamped her mouth shut, shaking her head again. I think you should leave, she said finally, her voice shaking. I laughed bitterly. Leave? This is my house, my kids, and you think you can just kick me out? Her eyes hardened, and the fear was gone, replaced by that same cold defiance I'd seen the night before. You really want the truth, James? She said, her voice dripping with venom. Fine. Lily's not yours. She never was. The words hit me like a freight train. I stumbled back, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. What are you talking about? I choked out. Laura stepped closer, her expression unrelenting. You heard me. Lily isn't yours. And maybe it's time you accept that. The room fell silent, her words hanging in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. My mind was spinning, my vision blurring as I tried to make sense of what she'd just said. 15 years of fatherhood. 15 years of building a family, raising Ethan, welcoming Lily into the world. And it was all a lie. The air felt heavy, suffocating, as Laura's words echoed in my mind. Lily isn't yours. She never was. I could barely see straight, my vision blurred with a mix of fury, disbelief, and something far worse, betrayal. Laura stood there, her arms crossed, daring me to react. Her defiance was the final twist of the knife, and it pushed me over the edge. You've got 2 seconds to explain yourself, I growled, my voice low and dangerous. Her lips curved into a bitter smile, but there was no warmth in it, just contempt. Explain what, James? That I made a mistake? That I wanted something more than this dull, predictable life you gave me? I took a step closer, my fists clenched. You're going to stand there and blame me for what you did? For lying to me? For lying to our kids? She flinched at that, just slightly, but then her walls went back up. They're my kids, she spat. Ethan, Lily, they're mine. You don't get to claim them just because you've been playing house for 15 years. It was like being hit with a second blow before I'd even recovered from the first. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You're a monster, I said, my voice shaking with rage. You lied to me, to Ethan, to everyone. And now you're trying to act like you're the victim. Laura's jaw tightened. You think this is easy for me? She snapped. Do you think I wanted this to happen? I tried, James. I tried to make this work. But you Don't you dare put this on me. I interrupted, my voice rising. I've been nothing but loyal to you. I've been here building this life while you were out. What? Screwing around? Letting some other man into our house? Into our daughter's room? That, she froze. Her face paled, and for the first time, I saw something crack in her facade. That's not what you think, she said quickly, her voice unsteady. Then tell me what it is. I roared, slamming my fist against the counter. Tell me who he is, Laura. Tell me what he wants with Lily. She took a step back, her eyes darting toward the hallway as if she were calculating her escape. You wouldn't understand, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Try me, I said, my tone cold. There was a long silence. Then she looked me dead in the eye and said, Nick is her father. The world tilted again. I stumbled back, gripping the edge of the counter for support. You're lying, I said, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. I'm not, she said, her voice flat. Nick is Lily's biological father, and he's been in her life more than you even realize. I stared at her, my mind racing. The voice on the baby monitor, the shadow in Lily's room. It all made sense now. You've been letting him come here, I said slowly, the realization hitting me like a freight train. Behind my back, while I was at work, while I was upstairs. You've been letting him pretend to be her father. Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. Something in me snapped. I grabbed the baby monitor from the counter, pulling up the footage from that night. I shoved it in her face. This is what you've been doing? Letting him sneak into our daughter's room in the middle of the night? Whispering to her, calling himself her daddy. She didn't look at the screen. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. Do you even know what you've done? I demanded. Do you know how sick this is? How wrong? She finally looked up, her expression unreadable. You think you're some kind of Saint James? She said, her voice cold. You're not. You've been so busy being the perfect dad that you never even noticed how miserable I was. Nick gave me something you never could. The word stung, but I didn't let her see it. And what's that? I asked, my voice dripping with contempt. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, then said, Control, control. The word hung in the air like a bomb waiting to go off. I didn't fully understand what she meant, but I knew one thing. Laura had been playing me for years, and now, with everything out in the open, she wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Get out, I said, my voice shaking with rage. She blinked, startled. What? I said. Get out, I roared, pointing to the door. You don't get to stand here and justify this. Pack your things and get the hell out of my house. Her expression shifted from shock to fury. You don't get to kick me out, she hissed. This is my house, my kids. If anyone's leaving, it's you. Before I could respond, a small voice interrupted us. Daddy. I turned to see Ethan standing in the hallway, his face pale, his eyes wide with confusion. Behind him, Lily clutched her stuffed bunny, looking up at us with innocent curiosity. Neither of us said a word as Ethan stepped closer, his gaze flicking between me and Laura. What's going on? He asked, his voice trembling. Why are you yelling? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. How could I possibly explain this? How could I tell him that everything he thought he knew about his family was a lie? Before I could even try, Ethan looked straight at Laura and said something that made the air leave the room. Is that why you always said I wasn't like him? He asked, his voice cracking. Because he's not my real dad either? The world went silent. Laura's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. And then, the house exploded into chaos. Ethan's question hit like a thunderclap, leaving the room in a vacuum of silence. My mind refused to process the words, as if my brain had shut down to protect itself from the impact. Because he's not my real dad either? Laura's face was a mask of pure panic, her eyes wide, her lips trembling as she struggled to find the right words. But there were no right words. Not now. Not after this. Ethan, I started, my voice barely steady. What are you talking about? He glanced between us, confusion and hurt etched into every line of his face. Mom said it all the time, he said. Whenever you weren't around, she'd say stuff like, You're nothing like him. Or, you didn't get that from James. I stared at Laura, the fury building like a wildfire in my chest. Is it true? I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Is Ethan not my son either? Laura took a step back, her hands raised as if to defend herself. James, answer me. I roared, slamming my fist on the table so hard that Lily jumped, clutching her bunny tighter. Laura's gaze flickered to Ethan, then to Lily, and then back to me. The guilt in her eyes was answer enough. I didn't plan for this to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. Oh, so your plan was to just never tell me? To let me raise a son who wasn't mine, and then a daughter who wasn't mine either? How long were you going to keep this up, Laura? Forever. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. It wasn't like that, she pleaded. You have to understand. Understand what? I snapped. That you've been lying to me for 15 years? That you've made me a fool in front of my own kids? There's nothing to understand, Laura. Nothing. Ethan's voice cut through the tension, shaky but firm. If he's not my dad, then who is? Laura turned to him, her face crumpling. Ethan, sweetheart, it doesn't matter. James has always been your father in every way that counts. Biology doesn't change that. But Ethan wasn't having it. Who is he? He demanded, his voice rising. Tell me. Laura hesitated, and for a moment I thought she might not answer. But then, in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, she said, His name is Mark. The name landed like a slap, and I saw Ethan flinch. He took a step back, shaking his head. Mark? Uncle Mark? You're joking, right? Please tell me you're joking. My blood ran cold. Uncle Mark, my best friend. The man who had been at every birthday, every barbecue, every holiday for the past 15 years. No, I said, my voice low and deadly. Tell me this isn't what it sounds like. Laura turned to me, her tears flowing freely now. It was a mistake, she said desperately. It only happened once. Don't you dare lie to me again, I snarled, cutting her off. Don't you dare insult me with another lie. She crumbled then, collapsing onto the couch as sobs racked her body. I was lonely, she choked out. You were always working and Mark was there. He listened. He understood me in a way you never did. Couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in, the walls of the room closing around me. Mark. Of all people, Mark. Ethan was pacing now, his hands tugging at his hair. So what? He's my dad? Is that what you're saying? No, I said firmly, my voice hard as steel. He's not your dad, Ethan. I'm the one who raised you, who's been there for you every single day of your life. Don't you ever forget that. Ethan stopped pacing, his eyes brimming with tears. But it's not true, is it? He said, his voice breaking. You're not really my dad. I couldn't answer him. I didn't know what to say. And then Lily, who had been silent this whole time, spoke up in her tiny, innocent voice. Daddy? She said, looking up at me with those wide, trusting eyes. My heart shattered. Laura reached for her, but I stepped in, scooping Lily up into my arms. Don't touch her, I said, my voice cold. You don't deserve to call yourself her mother. Laura's face crumpled, but I didn't care. I carried Lily out of the room, Ethan following close behind, and slammed the door on the wreckage of the life I thought I had. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Laura had taken everything from me. My trust, my family, my dignity. She thought she could break me, that I'd just walk away and let her keep the life she'd built on lies. She was wrong. Ethan's question hit like a thunderclap, leaving the room in a vacuum of silence. My mind refused to process the words, as if my brain had shut down to protect itself from the impact. Because he's not my real dad either? Laura's face was a mask of pure panic, her eyes wide, her lips trembling as she struggled to find the right words. But there were no right words. Not now. Not after this. Ethan, I started, my voice barely steady. What are you talking about? He glanced between us, confusion and hurt etched into every line of his face. Mom said it all the time, he said. Whenever you weren't around, she'd say stuff like, You're nothing like him. Or, you didn't get that from James. I stared at Laura, the fury building like a wildfire in my chest. Is it true? I demanded, my voice shaking with rage. Is Ethan not my son either? Laura took a step back, her hands raised as if to defend herself. James, answer me, I roared, slamming my fist on the table so hard that Lily jumped, clutching her bunny tighter. Laura's gaze flickered to Ethan, then to Lily, and then back to me. The guilt in her eyes was answer enough. I didn't plan for this to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to tell you. I laughed bitterly, the sound sharp and hollow. Oh, so your plan was to just never tell me? To let me raise a son who wasn't mine, and then a daughter who wasn't mine either? How long were you going to keep this up, Laura? Forever. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. It wasn't like that, she pleaded. You have to understand. Understand what? I snapped. That you've been lying to me for 15 years? That you've made me a fool in front of my own kids? There's nothing to understand, Laura. Nothing. Ethan's voice cut through the tension, shaky but firm. If he's not my dad, then who is? Laura turned to him, her face crumpling. Ethan, sweetheart, it doesn't matter. James has always been your father in every way that counts. Biology doesn't change that. But Ethan wasn't having it. Who is he? He demanded, his voice rising. Tell me. Laura hesitated, and for a moment I thought she might not answer. But then, in a voice so soft it was almost a whisper, she said, His name is Mark. The name landed like a slap, and I saw Ethan flinch. He took a step back, shaking his head. Mark? Uncle Mark? You're joking, right? Please tell me you're joking. My blood ran cold. Uncle Mark, my best friend. The man who had been at every birthday, every barbecue, every holiday for the past 15 years. No, I said, my voice low and deadly. Tell me this isn't what it sounds like. Laura turned to me, her tears flowing freely now. It was a mistake, she said desperately. It only happened once. Don't you dare lie to me again, I snarled, cutting her off. Don't you dare insult me with another lie. She crumbled then, collapsing onto the couch as sobs racked her body. I was lonely, she choked out. You were always working and Mark was there. He listened. He understood me in a way you never did. Couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was caving in, the walls of the room closing around me. Mark. Of all people, Mark. Ethan was pacing now, his hands tugging at his hair. So what? He's my dad? Is that what you're saying? No, I said firmly, my voice hard as steel. He's not your dad, Ethan. I'm the one who raised you, who's been there for you every single day of your life. Don't you ever forget that. Ethan stopped pacing, his eyes brimming with tears. But it's not true, is it? He said, his voice breaking. You're not really my dad. I couldn't answer him. I didn't know what to say. And then Lily, who had been silent this whole time, spoke up in her tiny, innocent voice. Daddy? She said, looking up at me with those wide, trusting eyes. My heart shattered. Laura reached for her, but I stepped in, scooping Lily up into my arms. Don't touch her, I said, my voice cold. You don't deserve to call yourself her mother. Laura's face crumpled, but I didn't care. I carried Lily out of the room, Ethan following close behind, and slammed the door on the wreckage of the life I thought I had. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Laura had taken everything from me. My trust, my family, my dignity. She thought she could break me, that I'd just walk away and let her keep the life she'd built on lies. She was wrong. I spent the rest of the night in Ethan's room, Lily asleep on my chest while Ethan sat cross-legged on his bed, staring at the floor. Neither of us spoke much. The weight of what we'd learned left little room for words. I kept playing the scene in my head, over and over. Mark, Uncle Mark, the man I'd trusted with my life, the man I'd laughed with, confided in, invited into my home. And Laura? I couldn't even begin to fathom how far her lies had gone. Ethan finally broke the silence. What happens now? He asked, his voice small, fragile. I sighed, shifting Lily slightly. I don't know, I admitted. But I promise you this, no matter what, you and Lily come first. Always. He nodded but didn't look convinced. Do you hate me? He asked, his voice cracking. I sat up straighter, my heart breaking all over again. Ethan, no. Never. None of this is your fault. Okay? None of it. But I'm not really your son, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. You are my son, I said firmly, locking eyes with him. You always will be. A DNA test doesn't change that. I've been your dad since the day you were born, and nothing is going to take that away from us. He nodded again, but the tears in his eyes told me he wasn't convinced. By morning, I had a plan. Laura didn't come downstairs until late, her face blotchy and her hair a mess. She looked at me, then at Ethan and Lily, who were eating breakfast at the table. We need to talk, she said, her voice hoarse. I stood, my jaw tightening. Ethan, take Lily to the living room, I said. He didn't argue, scooping up his sister and leaving the room without a word. Once they were gone, I turned to Laura. You have one chance to tell me the truth, the whole truth. If I catch you lying again, I swear you'll regret it. She bristled at my tone but didn't argue. Fine, she said, crossing her arms. What do you want to know? Is Ethan mine? I asked, my voice cold and steady. Her eyes flickered, and for a moment, I thought she might try to lie. But then she shook her head. No, she said quietly. The confirmation felt like a knife twisting in my gut, but I pushed the pain down. And Lily? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, she whispered, No. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. How long has this been going on? How many men have there been? She hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. Just Mark and Nick, she said. But it's not like I planned for this to happen. It just did. I laughed bitterly, right? Because cheating on your husband for 15 years just happens. She flinched but didn't respond. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things and leave. Today. You can go to Mark, to Nick, to whoever the hell you want. But you're not staying here, and you're not taking Ethan or Lily with you. Her head snapped up, her eyes blazing. You can't do that, she hissed. They're my kids. They're our kids, I said, my voice like steel. And after what you've done, no court in the world is going to side with you. She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. Don't test me, Laura. You think I won't fight for them? Try me. Her shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. And where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice breaking. Not my problem, I said coldly. For the first time, I saw real fear in her eyes. But I didn't care. Not anymore. By the afternoon, she was gone. I didn't let her say goodbye to Ethan or Lily. She didn't deserve it. But as I watched her car pull out of the driveway, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Laura had spent 15 years building a web of lies, and I had no doubt she'd try to spin more. The question was, how far was she willing to go? And how far was I willing to go to protect the family I had left? For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. But it wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet. It was the kind that sat heavy in your chest, pressing down, making every breath feel like a struggle. Laura was gone, but her shadow lingered in every corner, in every photo frame, in every trace of her that I couldn't yet bring myself to throw away. Ethan wasn't taking it well. He'd barely said a word since Laura left, keeping himself locked in his room. Lily, too young to understand, wandered the house asking when Mommy would be back. Each time, my heart broke a little more. I was barely holding it together, but I couldn't afford to fall apart. Not now. The next few days passed in a blur of lawyers and meetings. I filed for sole custody of Ethan and Lily, determined to keep Laura as far away from them as possible. My lawyer, a sharp-tongued woman named Rebecca, was cautiously optimistic. You've got a strong case, she said during one of our meetings. Infidelity alone won't win you custody, but her allowing a man to enter your daughter's room? That's going to raise a lot of red flags. Good, I said, gripping the edge of my chair. I want every red flag possible. I don't care what it takes. I'm not letting her win. Rebecca nodded, but her expression remained serious. Just be prepared. Custody battles can get ugly. If she decides to fight back, she might try to drag you through the mud too. I didn't care. Whatever it took, I was ready. But Laura wasn't the only thing on my mind. Mark, the man I'd trusted like a brother. I hadn't spoken to him since the confrontation with Laura, but I knew I couldn't avoid him forever. The rage I felt toward him was a fire I couldn't put out, and I needed answers. On the third day, I finally worked up the nerve to call him. He answered on the second ring, his voice casual. James. Hey man. What's up? Hearing his voice made my blood boil. I forced myself to stay calm. We need to talk, I said, my voice cold. There was a pause. Sure. What's going on? Come to the house, I said. Now. He hesitated. Is everything okay? No, I said flatly. It's not. An hour later, Mark was sitting in my living room, looking uneasy. Ethan was upstairs, and Lily was napping, so it was just the two of us. I didn't waste any time. I know, I said, leaning forward in my chair. Mark frowned. You know what? Don't play dumb, I snapped. I know about you and Laura. I know Ethan isn't mine. His face went pale. For a moment, he looked like he might deny it. But then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. James, I didn't want you to find out like this. Don't you dare act like the victim, I said, my voice shaking with fury. You betrayed me, Mark. You betrayed all of us. He held up his hands. I know, okay? I know I screwed up. But it wasn't supposed to happen like this. It was a mistake. Don't you dare call it a mistake, I roared, cutting him off. You don't accidentally sleep with your best friend's wife. You don't accidentally father his son. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Mark's jaw tightened. I know I messed up. Okay? But Ethan, he's still your son, James. You've been there for him his whole life. That doesn't change just because of biology. Don't you think I know that? I snapped. Do you have any idea what it's like to look your son in the eye and see your best friend staring back at you? To know that every moment we spent together was built on a lie. Mark didn't respond. He just sat there, his head bowed, as if he couldn't bear to look at me. I leaned closer, my voice deadly. You're going to stay away from my family, I said. You're not going to see Ethan. You're not going to see Lily. You're not going to step foot in this house again. Do you understand me? He looked up, his expression conflicted. James, come on. Ethan deserves to know his real father. His real father? I repeated, laughing bitterly. You think that's you? You've never been there for him. You've never raised him, fed him, stayed up with him when he was sick. You're not his father, Mark. You're just a coward who couldn't keep it in his pants. The words hit their mark. Mark flinched, his face twisting with guilt. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Not good enough, I shot back. Now get the hell out of my house before I do something we'll both regret. Mark stood slowly, his shoulders slumping. He hesitated for a moment, as if he wanted to say something else, but the look on my face must have stopped him. Without another word, he turned and walked out the door. As soon as he was gone, I collapsed onto the couch, my head in my hands. My heart was pounding, my mind racing. I'd won this battle, but the war was far from over, because Laura wasn't the type to go quietly. And deep down, I knew she wasn't done with me yet. The days after confronting Mark were a whirlwind of chaos and tension. I thought I'd feel some sense of victory after throwing him out, but all it left was an emptiness, a gnawing sense that this wasn't over. Laura's lies had reached so far, I wasn't sure where they ended. And then the bomb dropped. It was a Thursday morning. Ethan was upstairs getting ready for school, and Lily was still asleep in her crib. I was sipping coffee at the kitchen table, staring blankly at the stack of legal documents from my lawyer, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. You can't keep my kids from me. My blood froze. It didn't take a genius to figure out who sent it. Nick. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. He had the audacity to call them his kids? After sneaking into my house, after whispering to Lily in the dark. I wanted to smash the phone right there, but instead, I forced myself to respond. You don't have anything to do with my kids. Stay away, or I'll involve the police. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared again as he typed. Finally, his response came through. You're the one who doesn't belong. Lily is mine. Laura and I are working to fix this. You've been replaced." The room tilted. My vision blurred as rage flooded every inch of my body. He wasn't just claiming Lily, he was claiming my life, and Laura was helping him. Before I could respond, another text came through. "Ask Ethan who's been picking him up after school. He'll tell you everything." My heart stopped. Ethan? Picking him up? I didn't know what to believe, but the implications were clear. Nick wasn't just trying to stake his claim on Lily. He was after Ethan, too. I slammed the phone down and stormed upstairs. Ethan was in his room, stuffing books into his backpack, oblivious to the storm brewing behind me. "Ethan," I said, my voice sharp. He froze, looking up at me with wide eyes. "What? Who's been picking you up after school?" I asked, my tone leaving no room for argument. His face paled. "What? No one. Don't lie to me," I said, stepping closer. "Is it Nick? Has he been showing up?" Ethan's gaze darted to the floor. "It's not what you think," he muttered. "Then tell me what it is," I demanded. He hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. Finally, he said, "He showed up a couple of times. Said he wanted to talk to me. That he wanted to, explain stuff." My stomach churned. "What kind of stuff?" Ethan shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "I don't know. Just about him and Mom. About why things are the way they are. He said he wanted to be there for me." The words hit like a gut punch. Nick wasn't just worming his way into Lily's life. He was actively trying to replace me in Ethan's, too. "What did you say to him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "I told him to leave me alone," Ethan said quickly. "I don't want anything to do with him." Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Nick wasn't backing down, and neither was Laura. They were working together to dismantle everything I'd built, one piece at a time. I didn't wait another second. I grabbed my phone and called Rebecca. "We've got a problem," I said as soon as she answered. "What now?" she asked, sounding exhausted. "Nick," I said. "He's been contacting Ethan, picking him up after school, claiming Lily as his daughter. I want a restraining order. On both of them." Rebecca sighed. "That's easier said than done. Without concrete proof of harassment or danger, a judge might not grant it." "What about the baby camera footage?" I asked. "The texts? Isn't that enough?" "It helps," she said, "but it's not a slam dunk. Laura could argue that Nick has a right to see Lily if he's her biological father. And if he's not legally barred from contacting Ethan, there's nothing stopping him from trying." I gritted my teeth. "So what do I do?" Rebecca paused. "You need to be proactive," she said finally. "Document everything. Every text, every encounter, every word Ethan says about Nick. And keep an eye on your kids. If he steps out of line, we'll have a case." Her advice was sound, but it wasn't enough. I didn't want to wait for Nick to make another move. I wanted to end this. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat down with a notebook and started writing everything I knew. Every lie Laura told, every time Nick crossed the line, every suspicious moment from the past 2 years. And as I wrote, a plan began to form. Laura and Nick thought they could take my family from me. They thought they could replace me, erase me, and build their happy little fantasy. But they underestimated me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And when I was done, they'd regret ever trying to take what was mine. I knew this wasn't over. Laura and Nick weren't the type to go down quietly, and their latest moves only proved it. They were getting desperate, and desperate people were dangerous. The message from Ethan earlier that morning had set the tone for the day. "Mom was outside school again. She wants to talk to me. What should I do?" My stomach churned as I read it. Laura was violating the restraining order, and now she was dragging Ethan into her mess. I called the school immediately, alerting the principal and security. Then I drove over, my mind racing with how to handle what was about to unfold. When I arrived, Laura was already there, standing by her car near the school gate. She spotted me instantly and smiled, a fake, saccharine expression that made my blood boil. "You're late," she said, crossing her arms. "You shouldn't be here," I replied coldly. "You're violating a court order." "These are my kids, James," she said, her voice calm but dripping with defiance. You can't just keep them from me. You lost that right the moment you put them in danger, I said, stepping closer. The restraining order exists for a reason, and if you don't leave, I'll make sure you face the consequences. She scoffed, brushing her hair out of her face. Consequences? Don't make me laugh. You think a piece of paper can stop me from being a mother? Nick and I have plans, James. You're just a temporary inconvenience. My jaw tightened as I tried to hold back the storm brewing inside me. Is that what you told Ethan? That I'm temporary? That Nick is going to replace me? Her smirk faltered for just a second before she recovered. Ethan deserves to know the truth. He's not your son, James. You've been lying to yourself for 15 years, pretending like this perfect little family is real. But it's not. Her words were like venom, but I forced myself to stay calm. And you think Nick is the answer? The man sneaking into my house, whispering to Lily in the middle of the night. You've put your kids in harm's way to cover for him, and you call that being a mother? Laura's eyes flashed with anger, but before she could respond, the school security officer arrived, accompanied by a police officer I'd called earlier. Ma'am, you're not allowed on school property, the officer said firmly. You need to leave now. Laura hesitated, glancing between me and the officer. This isn't over, she hissed, her voice low and venomous. You can't keep them from me forever. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. You've already lost, Laura. Every time you pull a stunt like this, you're just making it easier for me to make sure you're out of their lives for good. Her eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought she might lash out. But instead, she turned and got into her car, slamming the door before speeding off. As I watched her leave, my chest felt heavy. It wasn't over, not yet. Laura and Nick were too arrogant, too reckless to back down quietly. But this time, I was ready for them. That night, I finalized the last piece of my plan. It was time to make sure they couldn't come back from this, to protect Ethan and Lily no matter what. Laura had played her games long enough. Now it was my turn. The courtroom victory was a relief, but it wasn't the end of the battle. Winning custody of Ethan and Lily meant securing their future, and that required facing the fallout of everything Laura and Nick had done. The next few days were quiet, almost too quiet. Laura stayed out of sight, but I knew it wouldn't last. Nick's scandal at work had escalated. He'd been fired, his reputation shredded. But even as they both disappeared from public view, I couldn't shake the feeling that they were plotting their next move. It wasn't until Friday night that the final confrontation came. I was tucking Lily into bed when I heard Ethan call for me from the living room. His voice was sharp, urgent. When I got there, he was holding my phone, his face pale. It's Mom, he said, handing it to me. I looked at the screen. It wasn't a call. It was a live video feed sent through a burner account. And on the screen was Laura, standing in what looked like the parking lot of the motel where she'd been staying. Nick was with her, pacing behind her like a caged animal. You think you've won, James? Laura said, her voice cold and biting. But this isn't over. You've poisoned my kids against me, turned them into your little soldiers. You don't deserve them. You never did. Nick stepped forward, glaring into the camera. We're coming for them, he snarled. We'll see you in court again, and this time we won't lose. The feed cut out. I set the phone down, my hands shaking with rage. Ethan was staring at me wide-eyed. What does she mean? He asked, his voice trembling. I knelt in front of him, gripping his shoulders gently. It means they're desperate, I said, but we're not letting them win. You and Lily are staying with me. That's not going to change. He nodded, but the fear in his eyes didn't fade. Do you think they'll come here? They won't get the chance, I said firmly. That night, I contacted Rebecca again. The restraining orders were already in place, but we filed an emergency report with the police, alerting them to Laura and Nick's threats. I also installed new security cameras around the house and had a friend in law enforcement patrol the neighborhood for extra peace of mind. But what mattered most was making sure Ethan and Lily felt safe. The next morning, I sat Ethan down and told him the full truth, the parts I tried to shield him from before. Your mom and Nick made their choices, I said, my voice steady. But those choices don't define us. They don't define you. What matters is that we're here, together, and we're not going to let them tear us apart. Ethan nodded slowly, his eyes brimming with tears. Do you ever wish we weren't, your kids? I put my hand on his shoulder, meeting his gaze. Never, I said firmly. You're my son, Ethan, and Lily is my daughter. No one can change that. Not Laura, not Nick, not a DNA test. Family isn't about who shares your blood. It's about who shows up, who fights for you, who loves you no matter what. That seemed to lift some of the weight off his shoulders. He hugged me then, holding on tightly, and I realized just how much this had been weighing on him too. By the end of the week, the police confirmed they'd located Laura and Nick at a motel outside town. They'd been warned. Any further contact would result in immediate arrest. That was the last I heard of them. In the weeks that followed, life began to stabilize. I focused on Ethan and Lily, on rebuilding the sense of security Laura and Nick had tried to shatter. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of sadness, of anger, but we got through it together. One night, as I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset, Ethan joined me. He sat in silence for a moment before asking, "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" I thought about it, choosing my words carefully. "Maybe," I said, "but if we do, we'll be ready. We'll handle it. Because no matter what, we've got each other. And that's enough." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Life doesn't always turn out the way you plan. It can knock you down, break you apart, and force you to face truths you never wanted to confront. But in the end, it's not about the mistakes or the betrayals. It's about what you do next. For me, the lesson was simple. Fatherhood isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about standing tall when everything else crumbles, about being the anchor for the people who need you most. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the yard in golden light, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. My family wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough.
She didn't even have the decency to call. I was halfway through reheating the lasagna she always pretended to like when my phone buzzed. No ringtone, just the faint hum of finality. The screen lit up with her name, Monica, kiss mark, and below it, a preview of the message. "I'm ditching you for good. I found a younger, wealthier stud." I remember thinking the lasagna was overcooked. The full message wasn't any better. "Don't call. Don't beg. I've already moved half. Don't try anything dumb. Bryce is better in every way." No punctuation. No warmth. Just raw, smug triumph typed in a Hilton lobby somewhere in Miami Beach, while she probably clinked mimosas with her girls and kissed the guy's abs over room service pancakes. She really thought that would break me. I stared at the phone, reread the message once, twice. Then I put it down. Not gently, but not in rage either. Just a controlled, almost clinical tap onto the granite countertop. I didn't touch my food again. Not because I lost my appetite, but because I didn't want crumbs on the documents sitting in the drawer next to the dishwasher. I'd been adding to that file for weeks. Copies, records, backup drives. My little quiet rebellion disguised as nightly paperwork. See, Monica had been slipping for a while. New routines, new bras, gym time that didn't show on her. Passwords changed for security. And that laugh, too sharp when she texted, like something was always funny somewhere else. I didn't confront her, didn't even hint. Instead, I gave her rope, and she tied the knot herself. The accounts she mentioned? They weren't real, not the ones that mattered. I'd learned early on that when someone starts getting ready to leave you, the best thing you can do is let them think they already did. Let them get sloppy. Let them act bold. And Monica, bless her deceitful little heart, mistook my silence for stupidity. She moved money all right into a trap. 3 months ago, I'd shifted everything critical, 401k, brokerage, my dad's old inheritance, into a separate trust under a shell she never knew existed. What she did see was a decoy account I set up using mirrored transactions and dummy deposits, just enough to look joint. It was her playground, her little let me drain him fantasy. And tonight, she'd finally pulled the trigger. Perfect. The TV played in the background, some documentary about Komodo dragons tearing apart a goat carcass. Fitting, really. I poured a bourbon, 1 ice cube, sat in the recliner, watching lizards chew through muscle, while my wife toasted betrayal on a Florida rooftop with a guy who sold NFT coaching packages on Instagram. The thing is, I didn't just see it coming. I waited for it. Because there's something far more powerful than rage when your life is collapsing. Readiness. Cold, calculated readiness. And while she pressed send on what she thought was the knockout blow, she had no idea the bomb had already detonated, weeks ago, under her future. I raised my glass to the TV. To Komodos, I muttered, and to women who think middle-aged men don't know how to play dirty. Then I checked the bank alert. Right on cue. Large withdrawal attempt detected. Protocol lockdown initiated. I smiled. Not because I won, but because the game had finally started. It started with a pair of red lace panties. Not the kind Monica ever wore for me. I found them by accident when I was folding laundry, something she claimed she hated, but conveniently left for me after her Tuesday yoga nights. These weren't Victoria's Secret clearance bin. They were high-end, satin-lined, and still had the boutique tag curled in the bottom of the hamper. And I know Monica. She's not the kind of woman who spends $120 on underwear unless someone's going to see it. That night, she came home glowing like she'd just meditated on a mountain. Said she was finding her center. I nodded, set her plate on the counter, and said, "You left your aura in the dryer." She didn't laugh. That's when I knew something shifted. Subtle, but sharp. She started locking her phone even when she showered. Her tone changed shorter, clipped, always a touch condescending. Like I was a relic. A phase. An obligation she'd outgrown. Once, she called me Bud. No, not playfully. Like I was a stranger she barely remembered sleeping with. The temptation to explode, ask outright, "Who is he?" nearly crushed me more than once. But I didn't. Because people like Monica, they expect fireworks. They plan for fights. They rehearse their gaslighting in the mirror. You're paranoid. It's your job stress. You're imagining things again. So I smiled and quietly declared war. First, I stopped using the joint card. Every gas station stop, every grocery run, every Amazon order went to a separate credit account in my name only. I let the joint account build, fat and juicy, while I redirected my paychecks elsewhere, split across 2 private banks in Vermont and Colorado, both under business entities I registered 3 years ago for a consulting firm I never launched. Then came the property firewall. The house? Refinanced under my name using a hard money lender she didn't know existed. The equity? Pulled out and moved to a hard asset account, secured by precious metals, ironically. Monica always rolled her eyes at my gold hoarding. The cars? Registered under a business fleet license. She drove the Lexus. Thought it was hers. Never read the pink slip tucked into my safe deposit box under a lockbox labeled Dad's Watch. Meanwhile, I began collecting. Receipts. Calendar inconsistencies. Her FaceTime logs that didn't match mine. The Uber receipts she forgot to delete from the shared Gmail. And most importantly, location data. She never disabled that on her iPad, which I borrowed when my Kindle died. She thought I was reading Tom Clancy. I was watching her timeline light up in places she never mentioned visiting. One stood out, a boutique hotel in the city. Twice a week. Different days. Always mid-afternoon. She claimed she was volunteering at a local charity. Funny how feeding the homeless involves valet parking and 2 hours of no signal. So I waited, not to catch her, but to catalog her. And when I had enough to make a priest cuss and a judge blink, I visited a lawyer. A quiet, soft-spoken man named Harold who looked like he taught chess to orphans and buried ex-wives in paperwork. Harold said 6 words I'll never forget. "We can end her before she begins." He meant financially, legally, strategically. No drama, no theatrics. Just death by 1,000 footnotes. We rewrote the will, modified my trusts, drafted the emergency divorce papers and slid them into a folder marked insurance. It sat in the safe for weeks, next to my wedding photo, the one where I was smiling and she was already calculating. When her message finally came, cocky, brutal, final, I didn't flinch. Because I wasn't discovering her betrayal that night. I was finishing my preparation for it. She thought she was being clever. She thought the bank app on her phone told the truth. But the numbers she stared at, the 5 figures she moved out of our joint account that night, the ones that made her feel powerful while Bryce rubbed her shoulders and called her queen, those numbers were as real as his promises. She didn't touch the real money. She touched the bait. See, 6 months ago, I met a forensic accountant. Friend of Harold's. Wore bow ties, smelled like printer ink, and talked about bank APIs like they were old jazz records. He helped me set up mirrored accounts, reflections of balances that looked like our real ones but didn't hold a cent. They were designed to sync just enough data to look legitimate. She checked the Chase app. She saw $72,514. But that $72,000 had been ghosts for months. The moment she initiated that transfer, she wasn't moving money. She was pushing a button I built. The real funds? Locked down in an irrevocable trust under a separate LLC. The paperwork so layered it would take a federal subpoena and a forensic team 6 months to untangle. Pensions moved. Retirement dissolved and restructured as a long-term annuity she couldn't touch without a 10-year cohabitation clause. Inheritance from my father? Off limits. Transferred to a custodial fund under my niece's name with a clause that allowed me to recall it with a signature, my signature. Every dime that mattered was behind glass. Bulletproof. Fireproof. Divorce-proof. But she wouldn't know that. Because I wanted her to believe she'd won. That the heist worked. That she'd stripped me bare in one bold move from her overpriced hotel suite with Bryce shirtless in the mirror behind her. And the best part? Her transfer attempt triggered 3 things in perfect order. An internal fraud flag, because the routing number she used was flagged weeks ago when I prepped the trap with my bank's security division. They called it a divorce shield. A notification to my lawyer, auto-sent from a private server the moment a withdrawal from that mirror account exceeded $5,000. Harold had her documents on standby. A screenshot protocol, the kind tech nerds use when baiting ransomware. Every move she made in that mirror account was captured and time-stamped in read-only logs. Monica didn't just try to rob me. She built my entire legal case for me. And oh, the irony. She left behind her login sessions. Sloppy. Amateur. The IP address from her hotel, the exact moment she hit submit, the name of the account she used, Stud 123. All documented. Her transfer wasn't just theft. It was evidence. Every digital move she made painted her into the corner she didn't even know existed yet. I imagine her face the next morning. In that pastel pink robe she probably bought with our points. Sitting poolside, sipping overpriced coffee, maybe laughing with her friends about how she finally got out. Talking about freedom, new beginnings, how Bryce understands her. And somewhere between her third laugh and fourth mimosa, she'll check the balance again, expecting that triumphant, gloating glow. Instead, she'll find a blank screen, then a red alert, then a locked account with a fraud hold, and a message from the bank saying she needs to call with documentation if she believes there's been an error. Except the only error was thinking I didn't see her coming. She planned the perfect escape, and I built the perfect wall to watch her bounce off it. Bryce. Even the name sounded like a spray tan. She mentioned him once, offhandedly, months ago. Oh, this guy at my gym teaches crypto classes on the side, she said, while checking her lipstick in the hallway mirror. He's got this crazy story. Used to be homeless. Now he trades full-time. Super inspirational. I remember nodding, saying nothing, as she spritzed herself with that citrus perfume she never wore around me anymore. The one that screamed, I want someone else to notice I exist. When the message finally dropped, I found a younger, wealthier stud. The dots connected. Bryce was the stud. I actually laughed. Not because I was jealous. Because I already knew the type. See, guys like Bryce don't build anything. They perform wealth. They flash. They borrow. They gaslight women into believing they're just 1 week away from the next big breakthrough. If only they had some seed money, a little help, a place to crash. But Monica? She ate it up. So I pulled up the laptop and started digging. Took me 20 minutes to find his main Instagram, at Bryce Built, full of gym selfies, luxury rentals, and captions like, work until your haters hire you. The man had 6 watches, 5 chains, and not one actual job listing. He claimed to run his own firm. Turns out that firm was an abandoned Weebly website with 1 landing page and a MailChimp form. But it got better. His so-called businesses? 2 LLCs. Bryce Tech Holdings and Iron Core Ventures, both dissolved. One had a Chapter 7 bankruptcy 3 years ago. The other had a civil lawsuit for securities fraud pending in Nevada, filed by an elderly couple who claimed he advised them into losing their retirement. And Monica left me for that. But the piece de resistance? His Airbnb lifestyle wasn't a perk, it was survival. Bryce had no permanent address. He bounced between short-term rentals, leased under aliases or burner business names. I even found one apartment in Miami Beach under a lease agreement with Monica's name on it as the co-signer. Dated last month. That was her girls' trip. She was moving in. And just when I thought it couldn't get more absurd, I stumbled onto something criminal. See, one of Bryce's LLCs, Iron Core, was flagged by FinCEN for unlicensed financial advising. And within the redacted complaint, a note that Iron Core solicited funds through Instagram under the guise of investment pooling. I downloaded the PDF, highlighted the date ranges. They overlapped perfectly with Monica's spa weekends. And in one screenshot, taken from a whistleblower Reddit thread, a wire transfer receipt from Monica F. Hastings to Iron Core Ventures, LLC. Amount, $14,000. Description, startup mentorship. My wife hadn't just run off with a guy who couldn't spell fiduciary. She funded a felon. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was leverage. Because if she signed those transfer forms willingly, she was complicit. If she was scammed, she was a victim. But either way, she was ruined. Financially, legally, socially. And as I stared at Bryce's smug grin on a rented Lamborghini, holding a vape pen like a chalice, I realized something chilling. She picked him. Over our decades of stability. Over our home. Over a man who kept every receipt, watched every shift in tone, and built a paper trail so airtight even Bryce couldn't juice cleanse his way out of it. The stud she ran to? He was the grenade. She just forgot she pulled the pin. The scream came just after 9 a.m. Not loud. Not cinematic. Not the shriek of horror you'd hear in a movie. No, this one was short, sharp, and real. It came from the third-floor balcony of the Marquise Hotel in downtown Miami, Suite 312, just as Monica refreshed her banking app for the third time and realized she was broke. The night before, she was a queen. Champagne, silk robe, fresh tan, her friends lounging around the suite like disciples. Bryce massaging her shoulders, whispering about how he never lets you shine, baby. She felt like she'd won. She had drained her husband. She had secured the upgrade. And now she was finally living the freedom she always claimed she deserved. That morning, the sun hit her right through the glass. She stretched, kissed Bryce's shoulder, and pulled her phone from under the pillow. The Face ID skin blinked red. Twice. Her heart fluttered, not with fear, but excitement. New beginnings. New bank. New man. Until the screen loaded. Your account has been temporarily frozen due to suspicious activity. She blinked. Hit refresh. The balance field read $0. Then came the notification. Fraud alert initiated. Please contact our security team. Then another. Legal hold has been placed pending financial investigation. She laughed at first. Thought it was a glitch. A fluke. She threw on her robe, walked barefoot to the minibar, and tried to use her card for coffee and bottled water. Declined. She stared at the card like it had betrayed her. Tried again. Declined. The clerk gave her the polite smile that stings more than any insult. Maybe try another? She pulled out her second card. Declined. Then her third. Fraud hold. And that's when her breath caught in her throat. The girls were still in the suite, hungover and gloating. She paced back in, tossing her phone on the bed. Some weird tech issue, she mumbled. But her hands were shaking. Her voice cracked on the word issue. Bryce wasn't there. His suitcase? Gone. His shoes? Gone. The keycard she gave him? Left on the nightstand next to a lipstick-stained glass of Prosecco and her Louis Vuitton purse. Also gone. She lunged for the closet. Empty. She spun to her luggage, unzipped the main pocket. Her jewelry pouch? Gone. The diamond earrings she bragged about in every selfie. The Rolex I gave her for our 10th anniversary, still engraved, to the woman I trusted with everything. Gone. She tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. She texted. Blue bubble. Delivered. No red receipts. Then came the flood. Emails from the bank. Legal language. Freezing orders. A notice from a firm she'd never heard of, Glenridge Legal Group, stating that funds had been rerouted due to confirmed evidence of fraudulent transfer intent. A document was attached showing her exact signature, on a transfer that triggered a fraud alert within a sealed trust system. Her hand covered her mouth. Her friends were watching now. One of them, Kelly, the loud one, asked, "Are you okay?" She couldn't answer, couldn't form words. Because this wasn't just theft. This was precision. Everything was tracked. Everything was timed. Everything was hers. And now it was gone. She checked the hotel lobby camera logs in her email. An automated message had popped up, showing Bryce leaving just before sunrise. With her bag. And the final gut punch? The concierge politely informed her that the suite had been booked on her card, and that since all her payment methods were now blocked, she had 2 hours to resolve the balance or vacate. She stood there, shaking, watching her entire illusion collapse in real time. Freedom? No. Just the aftermath of playing chess with a man who'd already built the board, placed the pieces, and timed her moves to perfection. Bryce didn't betray her. He completed the cycle. And somewhere, miles away, I poured my coffee, checked the weather, and wondered how long it would take before she realized the game was already over. She called at 10:13 a.m., then again at 10:14, then 10:16, 10:17, 10:21. 6 calls total in the span of 9 minutes. The first sounded panicked. The second, desperate. By the 6th, she didn't even bother with the usual, "Hey, it's me." She just breathed into the line for 5 seconds, then snapped, "Pick up, pick up, pick up." I didn't. She followed with a string of texts. "This isn't funny. What the hell is going on? Did you do something? Call me right now. You're being childish." That last one actually made me chuckle. Childish. Coming from a woman who ghosted her husband via text while dry humping a gym rat in a luxury suite paid with my Marriott Rewards points. The email started at 11:04 a.m. Subject line, "Let's talk." Then, "Emergency." Then, "I need you to explain." She switched tones like a malfunctioning Alexa, pleading one moment, threatening the next. At 12:42 p.m., she wrote, "I will tell everyone you abused me. I'll say you were controlling. I'll ruin you if you don't fix this." That one got flagged automatically. My attorney had already set up a filter for threats. The message was forwarded to his assistant, who logged it under preemptive manipulation. Monica didn't realize that silence is louder than rage. She was expecting shouting, a meltdown, maybe even begging. But I gave her none of that. Just emptiness. Then, at exactly 1:17 p.m., the call came. Not to her phone, but to her lawyer's. It was from my lawyer, Harold. Soft-spoken, precise, deadly. He explained, in calm legalese, that there would be no reconciliation, no conversation, no negotiations outside the courtroom. Monica would be served with emergency divorce papers within 24 hours, citing documented financial siphoning, including screenshots of the exact moment she transferred joint funds into a personal account. Digital evidence of adultery, including hotel logs, text messages, and social media images geotagged to locations where she claimed to be volunteering. Negligent dissipation of marital assets, including the $14,000 transfer to a known financial fraudster. And finally, intent to defraud, given her use of falsified joint access to access what were, legally, isolated trust funds. She was informed that these documents had already been filed and time-stamped with the county clerk's office. A preliminary injunction had been placed to prevent any further withdrawal or concealment of funds, and a temporary restraining order, financial, not physical, was pending approval to freeze her credit activity. At 2:03 p.m., her face must have gone white, because she finally went quiet. The girls in the suite were now in damage control mode. Kelly had left. Another was pretending to nap, but probably texting screenshots of the whole meltdown to mutuals. Monica tried to look composed, to regain some queenly posture. But her voice cracked every third word, and her foundation couldn't hide the blood-drained pallor crawling up her neck. She pulled out her laptop, searched for legal aid, called a paralegal she used to babysit for, Googled marital rights when accused of fraud. Every click exposed a little more panic. Every tab closed with a sigh that started to sound more like a sob. She tried to post a cute story on Instagram to reassert control, smiling in sunglasses, sipping water like it was vodka. No one liked it. Literally 0 likes. She deleted it within 15 minutes. By 3:30 p.m., she was in full spin mode. She called her sister, cried about mental abuse and how controlling I'd become. She begged for someone to fly out and rescue her. But Monica forgot something critical. In the court of public opinion, timing is everything. And I had been laying the foundation for months. I had stopped attending neighborhood parties 6 months ago, quietly. I'd spoken to our financial advisor 3 months ago, without alerting her. I told close friends we were working through something, painting her as distant but never speaking ill. And when she left, I didn't post a thing, just continued on. Calm, unbothered, respectable. She thought she was winning the war by burning the bridge. She didn't know I had drained a river. The silence hit her harder than the fraud alert. At first, she tried to spin it. Monica had always been a PR machine for herself. Years of curated smiles, inspirational quotes, and poolside selfies captioned "Self-love is the best love." She built a brand, one that whispered freedom, confidence, reinvention. So when she landed back home, broke, embarrassed, and -1 Louis Vuitton purse and Bryce, she still clung to that fantasy. She wore the mask, posted a cryptic selfie at sunset with a caption like "Real ones know the truth." But the real ones weren't buying it anymore. Because word doesn't walk, it runs. It started small. A mutual friend of ours, Craig, soft-spoken, big into cigars and backyard cookouts, texted me. Saw her downtown. Didn't say hi. Just thought you should know. Then, we had no idea, man. Everyone's talking. You good? The tide was shifting. Not publicly, no one posted anything. But behind closed doors, the whispers turned into a steady current. Monica had expected sympathy. Expected to play the misunderstood woman who found herself. Maybe some pity likes. A few DMs from high school guys who always had a crush. Instead, she found ice. Her old book club group stopped inviting her. Not blocked, just gone. She tried to call Anita, her best friend for 8 years, the woman who helped her pick out her wedding dress. Straight to voicemail. She messaged her 3 times. Read. No reply. Then she checked Instagram. Unfollowed. That one cracked her. Anita was supposed to defend her. Supposed to say things like, "You don't owe anyone an explanation," or "He was never exciting anyway." Instead, silence. Even worse was the group chat. The ladies. 8 women. Brunches. Spa trips. All of them saw her breakdown in Miami. All of them watched her card get declined and her boyfriend disappear. And none of them posted a single photo from that trip. Not one tagged her. Not one liked her recovery post. They erased her without saying a word. And then came the real blow. Her sister, Dana. Dana had always been the quiet one. Conservative. Practical. She didn't drink, didn't post, didn't gossip. So when Monica called, hoping to cry into a familiar shoulder, Dana answered coldly. "You transferred money from the trust. That wasn't yours, Monica." "Wait. What are you even talking about?" she stammered. "You know damn well what I'm talking about. You didn't just leave your husband. You tried to rob him. And you dragged us into it." "Dragged? What? How?" "I was listed on that emergency fund as a backup contact. I got a notification. Harold called me. You forged a document with my name on it, Monica." Dead air. Monica had used Dana's name in the transfer memo, trying to make it look like she was sending funds to help with a medical situation. Dana, who battled thyroid cancer 5 years ago, who nearly lost her house. The same sister who slept on our couch for 3 weeks when Monica didn't want her chemo energy around the kids. She tried to pivot. It was a misunderstanding. I was emotional. I didn't mean. But Dana cut her off. "Don't ever call me again." Click. That night, Monica posted another selfie. No filter. Just her face, smudged mascara, captioned, "Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who hurt you first." 5 hours. 2 likes. One of them was from a bot account. She was no longer the radiant phoenix rising from the ashes. She was just ash. And the people who once adored her, they weren't angry. They were embarrassed. Because it's one thing to cheat. It's another thing to get caught trying to steal, then be dumped by a scam artist, then run back expecting applause. She thought she'd lit the match. But she forgot. When you torch your life in public, people don't bring water. They bring popcorn. She walked into the courtroom like a woman heading to her own funeral, overdressed and underprepared. You could tell she'd rehearsed a different scene in her head. Maybe one where I'd show up angry, disheveled, maybe even broken. Maybe I'd look at her like I missed her. Like part of me still cared. But instead, I was already seated. Calm. Plain navy jacket. Black slacks. No watch. No theatrics. Just silence. The kind that makes a person feel the weight of their own choices echoing off the walls. She paused at the door when she saw me. There was that flicker of recognition of the man she once underestimated. The one she mocked in her messages to Bryce. Now, I was just another stranger at the far end of her courtroom collapse. Her lawyer, a younger guy in a badly fitted suit who clearly thought he was starring in an episode of Suits, immediately stood up and requested a delay. Your Honor, my client is suffering from acute emotional distress due to an unexpected breakdown of her marriage under hostile conditions. The judge cut him off with a raised palm. He'd read the packet. Everyone had. The binder Harold submitted was a brick of cold, boring, lethal data. Chronologically indexed. Digitally verified. Emails Monica had sent to friends mocking my boring routines. Texts to Bryce planning the exact weekend she'd clean out the joint account. Voice notes with her cackling. He won't know what hit him. He did. She tried to look fragile. A trembling hand clutched her handbag. Designer. Probably one of the last expensive things she still owned. Her mascara was perfect, her heels a little too high for court, and her blouse just a bit too low-cut. Like she still thought charm would save her. I didn't look at her once. Because I didn't need to. Her guilt had already filled the room. The judge leaned back, reading from the file. Mrs. Hastings, the court is in possession of documents suggesting willful dissipation of marital assets, attempted concealment of financial transfers, and extramarital activity affecting the financial integrity of the union. Do you wish to contest the admissibility of any of this? Her attorney sputtered something about emotional manipulation and context, but Monica just sat there, frozen, like her tongue forgot what words were. Because context doesn't save you from recordings. Harold pressed play on a short clip. Her voice, unmistakable, crackled out of the courtroom speakers. Once I get the money out, he'll be screwed. He'll have no idea where it went. We'll be in the Caymans by the time he even notices. She flinched. The judge didn't. Another clip. Bryce's voice this time. You sure he won't come after you? Monica. What's he gonna do? Cry into his pension? Silence. Then the judge glanced at me. Mr. Hastings, would you like to make a statement? I stood, straightened my jacket. No, Your Honor. The facts speak for themselves. And I sat back down. That was it. No monologue. No drama. Just surgical calm. Her lawyer tried to object to the tone. The tone. As if sounding confident was now a legal offense. The judge didn't even entertain it. Instead, she leaned in toward Monica, voice steady but unimpressed. Mrs. Hastings, you are facing not just the consequences of your marital actions, but potential civil liability depending on how the rest of these documents are processed. Do you understand? Monica nodded. Just once. Then whispered, barely audible, I didn't think he'd do this. But I wasn't doing this to her. She'd already done it to herself. I just let it play out. And in that sterile, echoing courtroom, with her life unraveled in black and white bullet points, she finally realized. There are worse things than being yelled at, like being utterly and completely outmaneuvered, while the man you tried to destroy just sits there, quiet, composed, and entirely untouchable. They gave her a 10-minute recess to compose herself. She didn't. She came back into the courtroom with her makeup blurred into uneven streaks, mascara pooled under her lashes like bruises. The carefully curled hair hung limp, her blouse clung to her back with sweat, and the Lewis bag now sat slumped like a discarded child's backpack on the chair beside her. She wasn't a woman in control anymore. She was just someone trying not to collapse before the final hit landed. The judge glanced at me. Mr. Hastings, you mentioned you have a settlement proposal prepared? I stood, nodded once, and slid a folder to the bailiff. He brought it to her lawyer. Her attorney opened it with a flair he didn't deserve. But the moment he read the first paragraph, that slick arrogance dropped from his face like a mask soaked in water. Monica leaned in, Whispered, "What? What is it?" He said nothing, just handed her the packet. She read, and I watched her eyes widen, slowly, then all at once. It wasn't just a divorce. It was a clean kill. No spousal support. No access to the trusts. No claim on the house, which was no longer in my name but held under a protective LLC she couldn't touch. No share of the retirement account, because it had been restructured as a defined benefit plan tied to tenure she hadn't shared. No claim on anything purchased in the last 3 years, which, conveniently, was everything of value. But there was something else. A clause that protected her from criminal charges, provided she signed within 48 hours. Because I wasn't trying to destroy her. I was giving her the option to walk away before she destroyed herself. Monica looked at me. Really looked, for the first time in what felt like years. She didn't see the quiet man who once made her coffee every morning, or the fool who watched her go out in heels at 10 p.m. and lied to himself about charity events. She saw what was left of me after her fire. She saw the part she hadn't calculated for. The one who didn't beg, didn't shout, just prepared and patient. And now, she had nothing to bargain with. Because Bryce, the man she left everything for, he was already in Tijuana, according to a friend of a friend who'd seen the latest Instagram story. Him drinking tequila, surrounded by 2 women who clearly didn't speak English, and not a trace of Monica in sight. He didn't even ghost her. He just evaporated. Her upgrade had downgraded her into oblivion. Tears finally came. Not the performative ones. Not the courtroom sniffles. Real ones. Silent. Hot. Shameful. She looked down at the packet in her shaking hands, then up at the judge. Her voice broke once, then twice, before she whispered, "I'll sign." The judge nodded. "This is your voluntary choice?" She nodded. Wordless. Pen in hand, she scrawled her name. And just like that, our 22 years became a file in a clerk's drawer. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just stood and buttoned my jacket. As I turned to leave, she reached out, reflexively. Not to grab me, just to stop time. "Why didn't you fight me?" she whispered, barely audible. I paused, hand on the door, and said, without turning, "Because that would have made you important again." Then I walked out. She wasn't my wife anymore. She wasn't even my enemy. She was just a woman who mistook silence for weakness and burned her life down expecting applause. It hit her inbox at 6:47 p.m., just after sunset, while she sat alone on the edge of a rented bed in a corporate Airbnb above a tire shop. Surrounded by half-unpacked luggage and the silent echoes of every bad choice she defended as empowerment. No subject line, no greeting, just the body of the message. "Good luck," like you said. Below it, a single attachment. She hesitated. Clicked. The image loaded slowly. Her hotel Wi-Fi was weak. Fitting. It was a screenshot. Familiar. Horrifying. It showed her transfer. The exact amount she thought she stole, $36,900.41. The timestamp? 8:11 p.m., the night she sent the text. "I'm ditching you for good." But that wasn't the part that made her blood freeze. The image wasn't from her phone. It was from his internal banking dashboard, with full fraud protocol metadata, color-coded flags, internal notes, and in bold, underlined font, "External breach detected. Lockdown initiated. All outgoing flagged." The note beside it read, "Trigger matched, marital siphoning attempt, pre-authorized." Pre-authorized. He had set this up in advance. He hadn't just predicted her betrayal, he had engineered it. The moment she hit send, she hadn't taken control. She had pulled the pin. And it wasn't just the money. It was the trust she never knew existed. The firewall he never mentioned. The silence she mistook for weakness. Every calculated moment he stayed quiet. Every dinner he didn't interrupt. Every "have fun" text he sent while she packed her new lingerie for Bryce. All of it was part of this exact, ticking sequence. She dropped the phone. Not out of panic. Out of something worse. Realization. She hadn't just lost the money. She had lost the narrative. No one believed her now. Not her friends. Not her sister. Not the law. She was no longer the woman who escaped a dead marriage. She was the joke who bet her life on a scam artist and got outplayed by a man who didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten her, didn't even curse. He just waited. She picked the phone back up. "Read the message again. Good luck, like you said. No emojis. No anger. No rant. Just closure. And somewhere, far away, behind thick walls and drawn curtains, I sat on the porch of a cabin Monica never knew existed. A glass of single malt in my hand. Quiet music humming from an old radio. My phone face down, powered off. I didn't need to gloat. She would never delete that message. Because it wasn't a warning. Or a threat. It was the final proof of who she'd tried to bury and who she'd become instead. And I didn't have to scream to end her world. She did that all by herself. I just made sure she watched it happen.
I should have known something was off when Angela's voice cracked. Just a little, when she first brought it up. Nathan, please. This is his future. His dream. I looked up from my coffee. She had that look, half pleading, half expectant. Like she already knew what my answer would be. Like she was certain she could reel me in. It was breakfast, and the sunlight spilled across the kitchen island, making everything feel warm and safe. Perfectly staged moment. But looking back, I can see the cracks even then. Brandon wasn't there. Brandon, the one who was supposedly desperate to make this happen. The one who, apparently, couldn't come to his own father and ask for help. No, it was Angela sitting across from me. Hands folded, voice soft. Like we were talking about donating to a charity and not throwing 300 grand into a business that didn't exist yet. I set my mug down. Tell me more. She launched in, eyes lighting up. A restaurant, upscale but modern. Farm-to-table concept. Locally sourced ingredients. She hit all the right buzzwords. Told me how hard Brandon had been working on this plan. How he just needed this one boost. How he'd pay me back in time. He's so talented, Nathan, she said, gripping my hand. But this world is tough. You know that better than anyone. She wasn't wrong. I built my company from nothing. I knew exactly how brutal it could be. And that's the thing. If Brandon had come to me, just once, if he had sat across from me like a man and asked for my help, maybe I wouldn't have hesitated. Instead, I had Angela's breathless sales pitch. I should have stopped, asked the hard questions, dug deeper, but I didn't, because I loved my wife, because I trusted my family, because at the end of the day, wasn't that what a father was supposed to do? I let out a slow breath and nodded. All right, let's do it. Her face lit up. She wrapped her arms around me, kissed me like I had just given her oxygen. And so, just like that, I signed the check. $300,000. Gone. I never imagined, not in a million years, the betrayal waiting for me on the other side. At first, I tried to ignore it. The small things. The way Brandon barely looked me in the eye when I asked about the progress. The way Angela started talking about his restaurant like it had sprung from thin air instead of being funded by my hard-earned money. I chalked it up to excitement, to stress. After all, opening a business was no small feat. I knew that firsthand. The first few months were a whirlwind. Contractors, permits, endless supply chain issues. Angela was all in, practically moving into Brandon's new space, overseeing renovations, tasting samples. I didn't mind. It was good to see her passionate about something. But then came the exclusions. At first, they were subtle. Meetings scheduled at times I couldn't make. Group emails where my name was conspicuously absent. I'd ask Angela about something, how the hiring process was going, what kind of margin Brandon was projecting on his high-end menu items, and she'd wave me off with a bright, "Oh, you don't need to worry about all that." I started noticing how the staff barely acknowledged me when I stopped by, how Brandon's business partners, guys I'd never met, never approved, spoke around me instead of to me. The first time I saw the investor pitch deck, my stomach twisted. It was sleek, well-designed, professional, and my name was nowhere in it. Brandon's name? Plastered on every page. Angela's name? Mentioned as a key advisor. The silent financial backer? No details provided. It was a minor thing, right? I wasn't looking for credit. But something about the way my contribution had been erased gnawed at me. So I asked. I walked into the restaurant one evening while Brandon was going over numbers with his manager. Took a seat at the bar, watched as he moved through the space like he owned it, like it had always belonged to him. "Looks good," I said, watching him jot something in his notebook. Brandon barely looked up. "Yeah, we've got some solid traction. The press coverage has been great. We've got traction." I leaned forward. "You know, I'd like to sit down soon and go over the financials." That got his attention. He finally looked at me, brows knitting together. Financials. I smiled, slow and even. You know, the financials. The ones tied to the $300,000 I put into this place. Angela's voice cut in before he could respond. Oh, honey, you don't need to stress over all that. Brandon's handling it. She breezed into the conversation like a well-timed commercial break. Took my arm, squeezed it, as if that would make me forget. Brandon's handling it. I almost laughed. I built an entire company from the ground up. I knew what handling it meant. It meant pushing me out. It meant making decisions with my money behind closed doors. I looked at Angela, then back at Brandon. Sure, I said. Just make sure everything's in order. He nodded, but his expression didn't change. For the first time, I had the sinking feeling that I was an outsider in my own family. The feeling that something was deeply, irreversibly wrong. And the worst part? I stayed silent. The night was perfect. Too perfect. The restaurant gleamed, polished within an inch of its life. Dim lighting casting soft golden hues over the sleek, modern decor. Guests milled about in expensive suits and designer dresses, laughing, drinking, toasting to Brandon's success. I sat at a prime table right near the center of the action, but somehow I felt like an afterthought. Brandon and Angela moved through the crowd like royalty, shaking hands, sharing inside jokes with people I didn't recognize. The place was packed. Investors, journalists, influencers, all singing praises for the visionary young entrepreneur who had made it all possible. Not one of them looked my way. I swirled the whiskey in my glass, taking it all in. The speeches, the pats on the back, the endless variations of, "We knew you had it in you, Brandon." I waited for a thank you, for a nod, for some acknowledgement, but it never came. Brandon was basking in it now, in the applause, in the congratulations. Standing near the bar, dressed sharp, his arm draped around some woman I'd never met. Angela beamed beside him, her face glowing with pride. Then, finally, the moment came. Someone clinked their glass. Brandon turned, smiling, and raised his drink. The room hushed. I leaned back in my chair, watching. "I just want to say," Brandon started, his voice smooth, confident. "None of this would be possible without the people who believed in me. Here it is. The moment where he acknowledges me, where he looks me in the eye and says, 'Thank you, Dad, for investing in me, for making this happen.'" But he didn't. Instead, his gaze shifted across the room, past me, past Angela, past the investors, to land on a man standing near the back. A man I had never seen before. A tall, broad-shouldered guy, probably in his late 50s. Sharp suit, cocky grin. Like he belonged here. Like he'd always belonged here. Brandon lifted his glass higher. "To the man who made this all possible." The air in the room tightened. "My real father." For a second, I didn't move. The words hung in the air, heavy, irreversible. Around me, guests whispered, exchanged glances. A few chuckled, thinking it was some kind of joke. Angela didn't look at me. She wouldn't look at me. Brandon was smiling, basking in the moment, completely oblivious to the silence stretching between us. And me? I took a slow sip of my whiskey, set the glass down carefully, and smiled back. Because, well, I had brought a little surprise too. I didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't let them see the ice-cold blade sliding between my ribs. Brandon's words echoed in my ears like a gunshot in an empty room. "To the man who made this all possible, my real father." The crowd erupted in polite applause, oblivious to the train wreck unfolding in real time. They didn't see the way Angela's fingers tightened around her glass, the slight tremble in her hand. They didn't notice how Victor, the man whose name I didn't even know until now, straightened his tie, smirking like he'd just won a long, grueling game. I just sat there, silent, unmoving, because what the hell do you do in a moment like that? I watched Brandon, my son, grinning like this was the best night of his life. He had no hesitation, no doubt, no second of reconsideration before those words left his mouth. Because in his mind, I was nothing. Angela didn't look at me, not once. She knew. She knew what was coming. I saw it in the way her shoulders tensed, the way she suddenly found her drink so interesting. She wouldn't meet my eyes, because she knew that if she did, She'd see something she didn't want to face. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't shocked. I was calculating. Victor clapped Brandon on the back, wearing that smug, self-satisfied grin of a man who thinks he's won something. Like this was his moment. Like he was the father, the mentor, the guiding hand in Brandon's life. And maybe that's what hurt the most. Not that Angela had been lying to me for God knows how long. Not that my son had just publicly discarded me like a used napkin. But that he actually believed it. He actually thought Victor had built this, had made this happen. My hands curled around the edge of the table, slow and deliberate. The applause was fading now, replaced by murmurs, whispers, people turning to look at me. What's he going to do? Does he know? Was this planned? I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. The real man who made this all possible? He was sitting right here, and he wasn't done yet. The weight of the room shifted. I could feel it, the tension curling in the air like an uncoiling snake. The way conversations hushed to a murmur, eyes darting toward me, waiting. I stood up, slowly, deliberately, not with anger, not with some dramatic outburst. No, that's what they were expecting. That's what they thought I'd do. Maybe throw my glass, storm out, make a fool of myself in front of their precious investors. But I didn't give them that satisfaction. Instead, I smiled. And that single, slow, measured smile was what made Angela's face drop first. Brandon's excitement, his champagne-fueled bravado, it dimmed just slightly. He wasn't looking at Victor anymore. He was looking at me, like a deer that suddenly realizes the headlights are getting closer. I adjusted my jacket, took a step forward. The floor felt steady beneath me, more steady than it should have, considering I had just been replaced in front of a crowd of strangers. I passed table after table. Eyes flickered to me, curiosity peaked. What's he going to do? Is he okay? Does he know? Angela took a small step back, heels clicking against the hardwood floor. Brandon looked from me to Victor, then back again. Dad, I held up a hand, cutting him off. Not angry, just in control. I stepped up onto the small podium they'd set up for speeches, letting the crowd settle, letting them wait for me. Then I leaned into the mic, voice calm, steady. Well, I said, my voice carrying through the room. I brought a little surprise too. Angela's throat bobbed as she swallowed. Victor's smirk twitched, just slightly. Brandon blinked, confused. And I reached into my jacket pocket, fingers curling around the weight of the documents I had been holding onto for months. Their world was about to tilt, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. The room had settled into a strange, hushed stillness. Nobody was clapping anymore. Nobody was laughing or toasting or patting Brandon on the back. The only sound was the faint clinking of glasses, the occasional scrape of a chair as someone leaned in, eager to witness whatever the hell was about to happen. Brandon stood there, confused but still riding the high of his grand moment. Angela? She was starting to fray at the edges. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Victor shifted his weight, arms crossed, the smug grin still plastered on his face, but his eyes had narrowed. He wasn't laughing anymore. I reached into my jacket, slowly, pulled out a thick stack of papers, neatly bound, weighty in my hand. Then, without a word, I let them drop onto the table in front of Brandon and Angela. The sound cut through the silence like a judge's gavel. Thud. Angela flinched. Brandon blinked. What's this? He asked, reaching for them. His fingers hesitated, as if he already knew, somewhere deep down, that this wasn't something he wanted to read. I took a step back, giving them space. Go ahead, I said, voice smooth, almost amused. Take a look. Angela was the first to react. She snatched the papers before Brandon could, flipping through them so quickly she barely registered the words at first. But then her hands slowed, her breathing hitched. Brandon leaned in, peering over her shoulder. And then, right there, in front of the entire restaurant, I watched the color drain from both their faces. Angela's fingers trembled. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed, eyes darting over the text, desperately trying to find a way out. Brandon? He looked like he'd been sucker punched. He turned a page, then another. His jaw clenched, his posture stiffened. I waited. I watched. The shift was happening. The unraveling. the cracks spreading in real time as the reality of the situation sank in. Because this wasn't just an investment agreement. This wasn't just a contract. This was ownership. And not his ownership. Mine. Angela's voice finally broke the silence. Small, shaky. Nathan. What is this? I tilted my head. What does it look like? Brandon swallowed hard, still scanning the pages, flipping to the last one. His eyes locking onto the signatures. His voice came out choked, disbelieving. You own the business. I smiled. Oh, now you're reading the fine print? Angela's grip on the papers tightened. This isn't possible. You gave him the money. Yes, I said, my voice calm, controlled. I did. And in return, I structured the deal exactly how I wanted. Full financial backing, but ownership under my name. Bank accounts? Mine. Lease? Mine. Every single asset tied to this restaurant. I leaned in slightly, just enough to watch the panic fully bloom in her eyes. Mine. Angela let out a shaky breath, glancing around, suddenly aware of all the eyes on us. This wasn't a private conversation. This was a public reckoning. Brandon looked at me like I just shot his dog. You tricked me. I laughed. A small, quiet chuckle. Tricked you. I repeated. Brandon, you never even read the damn contract. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Victor, who had been standing stiffly through the whole exchange, finally spoke. This is bullshit, he muttered, eyes narrowing. You wouldn't screw over your own son like that. I turned to him, my smile widening. Oh, I said. I thought you were his father. Victor's jaw clenched, but he had no comeback. He just stood there, his grip tightening around his glass, probably wishing he could smash it over my head. Brandon was still frozen, staring down at the documents like they might somehow change if he just blinked enough times. Like the numbers, the names, the signatures might morph into something else, something that didn't say that his entire empire belonged to me. Angela finally let the papers slip from her fingers. They scattered across the table, some sliding onto the floor. She pressed a hand to her temple, inhaling sharply like she was trying not to hyperventilate. She was breaking. Brandon was breaking. And me? I had never felt calmer in my entire life. Brandon's hands shook as he flipped through the pages, his eyes darting frantically across the text, as if searching for some kind of loophole, some hidden clause that would undo everything. But there wasn't one, because I made sure of it. His breath quickened. His fingers tightened around the edges of the papers, crumpling them slightly. His entire posture shifted, from confusion to disbelief, from disbelief to sheer, unfiltered panic. This can't be right, he muttered under his breath. Angela leaned over, her eyes scanning the text again, desperate, like she thought if she read it one more time, the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something different. They wouldn't. Brandon turned to another page, and another. His movements became jerky, frantic. The silence in the room felt suffocating now, thick with tension. His name wasn't anywhere. Not on the deed. Not on the lease. Not on the bank accounts. Nothing. This is a joke, he spat, his voice cracking at the edges. He lifted his head, his wide, panicked eyes locking onto mine. Tell me this is a joke. I took a slow sip of my whiskey, set the glass down with a quiet clink. It's not a joke. His face twisted. But you invested in me. His voice was rising now, frantic. You gave me the money. I tilted my head. No, Brandon. I invested in a business. The words hung in the air, sharp, cutting. A flicker of realization passed through his eyes, but he fought against it, shaking his head violently, gripping the documents like he could physically rewrite them if he just held on tight enough. This isn't... He turned to Angela now, his voice breaking. Mom! Angela was pale. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She looked at me instead, like she wanted to beg. I stared back, unblinking. She knew better than to try. Brandon's breathing grew heavier. He turned back to me, hands clenched, his jaw tightening. This is my business. His voice wavered, barely keeping control. I built this. I let out a small, amused breath. Did you? His nostrils flared. Yes. I gestured toward the papers. Because according to those, you own exactly nothing. Brandon blinked rapidly, shaking his head. No, you gave me the money. I did. I nodded. And you never once asked how. His hands gripped the table now. His entire body looked like it was fighting against gravity, as if sheer force of will alone could undo what had already been done. Angela reached for his arm, her voice soft, pleading. Brandon, sweetheart, He yanked away from her touch. No, he snapped, his voice breaking. This isn't right. This isn't real. But it was real. He turned back to me, desperation seeping into his voice now. This is a mistake. This has to be a mistake. I let him sit in the silence. Let the truth sink in. Because it wasn't just a mistake. It was his mistake. His arrogance. His entitlement. His failure to ask the right questions. He thought he could just have this. That I was nothing more than an ATM, a faceless bank account feeding his dreams. But now he knew. Brandon swallowed hard. He looked around the room at the investors, the journalists, the guests who were watching his humiliation unfold in real time. His breathing turned shallow. His fingers curled into fists. Fix it, he whispered. His voice was hoarse, barely audible. Fix it. I smiled. No. His face crumpled. Angela inhaled sharply, her fingers digging into the edge of the table like she was holding on for dear life. And just like that, Brandon realized. He had lost. Brandon's breathing turned shallow. His lips parted, but no words came out. His eyes flicked back to the papers in his shaking hands, as if there was still a chance. Somehow, some way, that he'd misread everything. That the nightmare unfolding in front of him wasn't real. But it was. And I was about to make sure he felt every single inch of the walls closing in. I stepped forward, slowly, casually, like a man with all the time in the world. Brandon flinched. He actually flinched. You thought I was an investor? I asked, my voice calm, almost amused. He swallowed. Angela's fingers twitched against the table, her body rigid, as if she were bracing for impact. I leaned in just enough to lower my voice, to let my words slip under his skin like a slow-working poison. I'm not an investor, Brandon. I tapped the top page of the contract. I'm the owner. Brandon's body jerked like I just slammed a hammer into his gut. His mouth opened, closed. He looked at Angela, at Victor, at the sea of eyes watching him unravel. And then, like some desperate, drowning man, he made one last attempt to claw his way out. No, this is wrong. Mom! He turned on Angela now, his voice laced with raw panic. You saw the paperwork. You told me everything was fine. Angela looked sick. Her mouth moved, but she had nothing to give him. No lifeline, no way out, because she hadn't read the paperwork either. Not really. She had just assumed, just trusted that I'd given Brandon exactly what he wanted. That was their mistake. They thought I was weak, pushover. A man who would hand over everything he built, no questions asked. Brandon staggered back, gripping the table for support. I worked for this, he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. I built this. I cut him off. No. I shook my head slowly, deliberately. You thought you built this, but you never actually owned it. I let the words sink in, watching as they spread through his body, as the realization took hold and rooted itself deep. He was nothing here. The restaurant, the bank accounts, the building itself, every single thing he thought belonged to him was legally, irrevocably mine. And now, in front of all his friends, investors, and every single person he had tried to impress tonight, he had to live with that truth. The arrogance was gone. The cocky confidence had evaporated. All that was left was fear. Brandon's hands curled into fists, his body shaking with a rage he didn't know where to direct. Victor, his real father, stood frozen, watching everything crumble, his face carved from stone. Angela reached for Brandon, her voice a trembling whisper. We can fix this. I laughed, a slow, quiet chuckle. And then I stepped back, adjusting my jacket, letting my next words roll out with smooth, ice-cold finality. Oh, sweetheart. I looked Brandon dead in the eye. You already lost. Angela's fingers curled around my arm, tight, desperate. Nathan, please. Her voice was barely a whisper, but there was panic underneath it. Real, raw panic. I didn't move, didn't flinch, just looked down at her hand on me like it was something foreign, something unwelcome. "We can fix this," she breathed, her nails digging in slightly, like she could physically hold me there, keep me from walking away. I turned my head slowly, meeting her eyes for the first time all night, and I saw it. Not love, not remorse, fear. Not fear of losing me, no. She had already made peace with that long ago. This was fear of consequences. Fear of watching everything she thought she had slipped through her fingers. I pulled my arm back, peeling her off of me like a leech. "Fix this," I echoed, my voice low, cutting. Brandon was still standing there, eyes darting between us, his face a mask of anger, betrayal, and something else. Something dangerously close to realization. Victor, for once, had nothing to say. He stood off to the side, silent, stiff. The smugness from earlier had drained from his face entirely. He wasn't jumping in to help, wasn't reaching for Brandon, wasn't claiming him. And that was the final insult. Brandon had thrown me away for this man, had humiliated me in front of a crowd, had raised a glass to his real father. And yet, where was Victor now? Nowhere. Just standing there, arms crossed, watching the train wreck unfold like it had nothing to do with him. Angela swallowed hard, her lips parting slightly, her mind racing for an angle, a way to maneuver out of this disaster. "Nathan," she tried again, softer now. "You don't have to do this." I exhaled sharply, a humorless laugh. "Do what?" I asked, tilting my head. "Own what's already mine?" Her face twitched. She knew she had no argument, so she pivoted. "This is your son." She motioned to Brandon, her voice strained, as if she was forcing the words out. You love him. You always have." I held Brandon's gaze. His face was still tight, lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. His fists clenched and unclenched at his sides, like he wanted to say something, needed to, but couldn't. And the truth? I didn't know if I loved him anymore. I didn't know if I ever really knew him. The kid I raised, the boy I tucked into bed at night, taught to ride a bike, cheered for at every single one of his baseball games. I had no idea where that kid went. Because this man standing in front of me, I didn't recognize him. Angela saw the hesitation in my eyes, thought she had an opening. She stepped closer, voice trembling now. "Nathan, I know this hurts. I know." I cut her off. "No." I let the word hang between us, let it settle in her bones. She blinked rapidly, her throat working. "You lied to me," I said, my voice quieter now, more controlled. "You made me pay for another man's son." Her lips trembled. I saw the moment it hit her, the moment the weight of those words crashed down on her chest. She had spent decades lying to my face, letting me believe something that was never true. And now, after all these years, the one thing she had always taken for granted me was gone. I watched her face drain of color, watched her fingers curl into fists at her sides, not out of anger, but because she knew. She had lost. She opened her mouth to say something, maybe to beg, maybe to justify, maybe to lie one more time, but I was already turning away, and for the first time in years I felt nothing at all. Brandon was shaking, not the kind of trembling you get when you're angry, but the kind that comes when your world is caving in and you don't have the strength to hold up the walls. He turned to Victor, the man he had just toasted, the man he had publicly chosen over me, his real father. "Victor." His voice was hoarse, small. Victor barely acknowledged him, just took a slow sip of his drink, like this wasn't his problem. Brandon took a shaky step closer. "Say something." Victor exhaled through his nose, finally turning his gaze to the son he had never claimed before tonight. And then, with a slight shrug, he said, "I never asked for this, kid." Brandon's face crumpled. It was barely a sentence, barely a response, but it hit like a death blow. Because what was unspoken, what Victor didn't bother to say, was "I don't want you. Not now. Not before. Not ever." Brandon staggered back like he'd been physically struck, his hands clenching into fists before releasing again. His entire body sagged, the weight of reality pressing down on him all at once. He had bet everything on this moment. He had humiliated me, turned his back on me, thrown his lot in with this man, and now, Now he was just standing there utterly alone. "Victor," he tried again, voice cracking. "I." Victor sighed, like this conversation was an inconvenience. "Look, kid, I don't know what you expected." He motioned vaguely to the room. This was your thing, not mine." Brandon's face twisted in disbelief, in growing horror. He had spent his whole life believing that if only he could get Victor's attention, his approval, his acknowledgement, everything would make sense. That there was some missing piece, some unspoken connection between them that had been stolen from him. But there wasn't. There never had been. Victor didn't care. He never had. And now, when Brandon needed him the most, when the last illusion had shattered around him, when he was looking for even the smallest lifeline, Victor wouldn't even throw him a word of comfort. Brandon's lips parted, but no words came out. His throat bobbed, his eyes darting around the room like he was searching for something, anything, that would anchor him. But all he found were eyes watching him unravel. Investors whispering, guests shifting in discomfort, Angela standing frozen, her hand pressed to her mouth, unable to save him. And me? I just stood there, because this moment right here wasn't my doing. Brandon had done this to himself. He had made his choice, and now, for the first time in his life, he had to live with it. The realization hit him all at once. His breath shuddered. His legs gave out slightly, forcing him to grip the table for support. Everything he thought he had? Gone. The father he had put on a pedestal? Indifferent. The empire he thought was his? Mine. Brandon had spent his whole life convinced that he had been robbed of something. But now he knew. He was never a prince. Just another fool who didn't read the fine print. Brandon's breathing was ragged. His eyes darted between Victor, me, and the scattered documents that had just dismantled his entire world. His hands gripped the edge of the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. Angela looked like she might faint. She wasn't even trying to salvage the situation anymore. Just standing there, hollow-eyed, watching her son break apart in real time. I let the silence stretch. Let him feel every second of it. Let it sink in that there was no escape, no backup plan, no one coming to save him. Then, finally, I exhaled and tilted my head. "You wanted a business?" My voice cut through the thick, suffocating quiet. Brandon's head snapped up. He looked at me with something between hatred and desperation. His breath uneven, his shoulders shaking. I took a step closer, lowering my voice just enough that he, and everyone else in the room, had to lean in to hear me. "You can work for me now." Brandon blinked. His mouth parted slightly. I smiled. "Minimum wage." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, some outright laughter. A few guests tried to cover their mouths, hiding their amusement behind champagne glasses. Others leaned into each other, murmuring, "Did he just say that?" Victor smirked, shaking his head slightly. "Not my problem." Brandon? He stood there, frozen, his brain trying to catch up, trying to process what I had just said. Angela stumbled forward, eyes wild. "Nathan, no." I turned my head slightly. "Why not?" She stared at me like she didn't even recognize the man in front of her. Like she was just now realizing how deep this went, how carefully I had laid the trap, how long I had been waiting for this moment. Brandon finally found his voice. "You can't do that." I arched a brow. "Oh." His face twisted. I built this." "No, Brandon," I said, my voice smooth, calm. "I built this. You played restaurant owner with my money. You had no legal claim, no equity, no leverage. I let my words settle before delivering the final hit. You were never anything more than an employee. You just didn't know it." Brandon let out a shaky breath. His fists clenched and unclenched, his entire body trembling. You can't." I gave him a mock sympathetic shrug. "You wanted to prove you were a self-made man, didn't you?" I gestured to the restaurant around us. "Go ahead. Start at the bottom. Earn your way up." The murmurs around us intensified. Someone chuckled. Angela made a choked sound, covering her mouth with her hand. Brandon looked like he was about to be sick. I glanced at my watch. "Clock-ins at 8 a.m. Don't be late." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving my son standing in the ruins of the life he thought he had. Angela's voice cracked behind me. Nathan, wait. Please, we can. I didn't stop. Didn't turn. Didn't give her the dignity of a response. Brandon didn't say a word. He just stood there, hollow-eyed, humiliated, his entire world crumbling around him. Victor, already slipping toward the exit, done with the whole mess. And me? I stepped outside, inhaled the cool night air, and smiled. Because for the first time in years, I was free.
Hey there, life is full of unexpected twists, just like the stories we share here. If this story touched you or made you think, consider subscribing to our channel. Every day, we bring you powerful real-life experiences of betrayal, resilience, and the strength it takes to keep going. Don't miss out. Join our community today, where we value truth, courage,